Gnome, and welcome to part 2 of an album for every year of my life, and there will be a link to the first part in the box below. So today, we're going to take a look at an album of every year of my life from probably, to me, one of the greatest decades in all of music, the 1990s. Towards this point in time, the biggest sound was grunge. We had rock. It was back, and it was in full force, and everybody absolutely loved it. And in the early 90s, I was not listening to it. I was still stuck in the oldie stations, listening to the songs from the 50s and 60s and 70s, and a little bit from the 80s as well. But I was coming of age, 12, 13, 14, and I finally decided I had to figure out what in God's name all of these people were listening to in terms of mainstream music, and after that, let's just say that the rest is history. So, we're going to start with an album from 1990, and it's definitely an interesting one. I think that the best album of 1990 for me was Cowboys from Hell from Pantera. Now, they're loud. Everything is big in Texas, including heavy metal music, but this was an heavy metal album unlike anything ever heard before. In your face, blow the speakers, blow the roof off of your house, loud and crazy awesome. Also a little bit of interesting songwriting, like the song Cemetery Gates, but there is nothing, and there never will be anything anymore like the sound that Pantera had to offer the world. And even though they were not around for so long, they truly made an impact in rock and heavy metal. 1991, I have to give it to one of the greatest names in grunge rock, not Nirvana, but Pearl Jam's 10. Even though Nevermind did come out around this time, in fact, in the very same year. It was 10 by Pearl Jam that was just unlike any album, and still remains today, at least to me. If I were to rank the top 100 albums I've ever heard, 10 would be one of them. You have Black, you have Even Flow, you have Jeremy, you have Alive, you have probably some of the most well-known Pearl Jam songs in the history of Pearl Jam's existence, and it is truly one of the greatest. In 1992, I give it to the true voice of grunge, not necessarily Nirvana again. I'm giving it to Dirt by Alice in Chains. It was probably their darkest and hardest album that they ever compiled, and if you really want to hear the sound of grunge, it is Alice in Chains. 1993, I go a little lighthearted, and I give it to Automatic for the People. Automatic for the People was probably one of the most memorable REM albums because it had a song like Everybody Hurts and The Man on the Moon. Everybody Hurts is probably known for its music video, and it has been used in so many things, all the way now till Jimmy Kimmel's Celebrity Mean Tweets. It was just such an impactful album, and unfortunately for REM, it was probably the last great album that they made. I know that there are so many other albums that came afterwards, but nothing truly holds a candle post-1993 in REM's discography. 1994 was an interesting year for me because that was the year that I started purchasing albums for myself, and since I knew where I was, I give 1994's best album to Dookie by Green Day. Green Day still is going strong. I cannot get over the fact that this was a band that my mother said to me that they're never going to be around again in a matter of a year or two. Meanwhile, they are going on their 25th year of existence. That is absolutely insane. They just put together a trilogy of albums. Dookie really was what put them on the map. Songs like Basket Case, When I Come Around, She, Welcome to Paradise, Pulling Teeth, you name it. Green Day's Dookie is still one of their greatest albums to date. 1995, I give it to one of my favorite bands of all time, and it is the Smashing Pumpkins with their double album classic, Melancholy of the Infinite Sadness. Songs like Zero, Bullet with Butterfly Wings, and Muzzle, Stumbling, 33, Where the Boys Fear to Tread, Jelly Belly. This is just a phenomenal album. It is unlike anything that you have ever heard. The Smashing Pumpkins, while they are considered part of the grunge movement, their sound is nothing like any other grunge sound, and it's impressive to me that they are still making music to this day, and there is apparently 2 albums coming out from them next year, and I'm really curious to see what their albums will be like in 2015. In 1996, I want to give it to a very interesting album. You probably have heard of this band. They're called Semisonic. You probably heard of their very famous single from 1998 called Closing Time. But their first album, The Great Divide, while it may not have Closing Time on this album, and no famous singles, it's a very good album. It's very different, very lighthearted, it makes you feel good, it's got some great songs in it. Probably my personal favorite is a song that everybody should download, and it's called In Another Life. And while they may not have had such a prominent career, The Great Divide is truly a unique and great listen. 1997, I know that so many people trash talk this band today, especially because of their lead singer, and a lot of people prefer Alter Bridge, but yes, I give the best album 1997 to My Own Prison by Creed, because before they were Knock, they were one of the best bands out there. And this one is an album that just has one great song after another after another. It goes back to the sound of post-grunge, songs like Ode and Torn, What's This Life For, One. It's just a great, hard-hitting album, and it still gives you a little bit of hope when you're listening to it. 1998 is an album that I do not own. I used to own it, but then I grew out of them, but there really wasn't anything out there that I could really say was the best album of 1998, and that's why I give it to the self-titled album, Godsmack. It has some of their most legendary songs. It is a hard metal album. It was starting to bring the world into the knowledge of nu metal after grunge was officially leaving, and it still kept the rock alive. And 1999, you're going to see a Gnome doc about these guys in a couple of months, and this is probably known as their most well-known and probably most amazing concept album that they've ever created, and it is Dream Theater's Metropolis Part 2, Scenes from a Memory. Why is this album so great? Everything. But probably the most interesting part is the fact that they took one song from their album Images and Words in 1992. They took the song called Metropolis Part 1. And then they took that song, and they broke it up, and they turned it into an entire sequel concept album called Scenes from a Memory. And that's why this is one of the best albums ever put together. And that takes us through to the 90s. So stick around, guys, for the final part of an album for every year of my life. I'm hoping that you're enjoying it. I would love your feedback as well. If you want to do this on your own, please. I feel that music needs to be a little bit more predominant. Not necessarily music videos, but just talking about music. There aren't that many people out there that review albums on YouTube. We should have them. Thanks for watching, guys, and actions speak louder than words.